On the far edge of the Varelli's belt where twin suns kissed the sky with amber and violet light, a woman knelt beside a sleeping dragon. Her name was Lyra. She was tall and lean with silver hair that fell like moonlight over her shoulders. Her skin bore the faint shimmer of old starlight, a mark of her elven blood. Beside her lay Kale, her dragon. He was not large like the war beasts of legend, but sleek and dark as cooled lava, his scales shifting from black to deep blue as he breathed. His horns were short and curved like crescent blades, and his wings folded close to his body like a cloak. They had lived here for 7 long cycles, hidden among the crystal spires of the moon. The spires sang in the wind, a soft hum that soothed even the deepest wounds. Lyra and Kale had come here after the fall of Aelthar, their home among the stars. Once it had been a kingdom of light and song, where elven ships wove through nebulas like dancers through fire. But betrayal came swift and brutal. Allies turned to enemies. The sky burned, and Lyra ran, not out of fear but to protect the only family she had left. Kale stirred, his golden eyes opening slowly. He raised his head and nudged Lyra's hand with his snout. She smiled, though her eyes were heavy. "Today is quiet," she said in the old tongue, the one only they shared. Kale made a low sound in his throat, a rumble like distant thunder. He did not trust quiet days. Too often silence meant danger was near. Lyra stood and brushed dust from her tunic. It was woven from spider silk and star thread, strong enough to stop a blade yet soft as breath. She had mended it many times. Each patch told a story, a battle, a night of rain, a stolen moment of peace. She walked to the edge of their perch where the crystal ground sloped into a view of the endless sky. Far off, the rings of Varelli's glittered like shattered glass. They were safe here, or so she thought. A shadow crossed the sun. Lyra turned sharply. Kale was already on his feet, wings half spread, a low hiss escaping his throat. High above, a ship descended. It was sleek and black, shaped like a blade turned sideways. No lights flickered on its hull. No sound came from its engines. It moved like a ghost. "They do not belong here," Lyra whispered. The ship circled once, then landed gently on a flat stretch of crystal not far from their shelter. The ramp lowered with a soft sigh. No soldiers emerged. Only one figure stepped out. She wore a cloak of deep red, its edges frayed with travel. Her boots were scuffed, her hands bare. She carried no weapon, but Lyra knew this was no ordinary messenger. The way she moved, calm, deliberate, unafraid, spoke of someone used to command. The stranger stopped 10 paces away and bowed low. Lyra did not move. Kale stepped in front of her, tail coiled, eyes fixed on the visitor. "I come not to fight," the woman said. Her voice was clear, steady. "I bring a summons from whom?" Lyra asked. "From the High Dominion, from Princess Selene herself." At the name, Lyra stiffened. Selene. She had not heard that name in years. Selene had been a child when Aelthar fell, raised among humans, then taken in by the Dominion when her parents died. Some said she was the last bridge between the old worlds. Others said she was a pawn. "What does she want?" Lyra said. The woman reached into her cloak and pulled out a small cylinder. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. She placed it on the ground and stepped back. Lyra hesitated. Kale snorted but did not block her path. She walked forward slowly, picked up the cylinder and pressed her thumb to its surface. It opened with a soft click. Inside was a scroll of bioparchment. The words appeared as she read them, written in ink that shifted color with her emotions. The message read, "You are summoned to the grand arena of Zenthar. Appear before the council on the day of the twin eclipse. Duel the champion. Win the trial. Win this battle. Win my hand. Refuse. And the elven refugees in Sector 9 will be executed at dawn." The parchment burned away the moment she finished reading, leaving only ash in her palm. Lyra stood very still. Kale pressed against her side, warmth flowing from his scales. She closed her eyes and breathed. She knew what this was. A trap wrapped in silk, a choice with no right answer. She looked at the messenger. "Why now?" The woman met her gaze. "Because the council fears you. Because Selene believes you are the only one who can break the cycle. And because the war is not over. It has only been waiting for you to return." Lyra turned away and walked back to the edge of the spire. Below, the wind sang through the crystals. It was a song of loss, of time passing, of things that could never be undone. She had left the war behind. She had buried her crown in the dust of dying stars. She had sworn never to fight again, but now they had taken away her choice. "How long do I have?" she asked without turning. 3 rotations. The ship will wait. Lyra nodded. Tell Celine, I will come. The messenger bowed again and returned to her ship. Within minutes it lifted off and vanished into the sky, leaving only silence behind. Cale nudged her shoulder. His eyes asked the question she could not answer. What do we do, he seemed to say. Lyra looked at him. Really looked. At the scar on his left wing from their escape. At the way his pupils narrowed when he was worried. At the steady beat of his heart so much louder than her own. We go, she said. Not because I want to, but because if I do not, more will die, and I have run from that truth long enough. That night they packed what little they owned. Dried fruit, water crystals, a dagger forged from comet iron. Lyra braided her hair tightly and pulled on her travel boots. Cale folded his wings and let her mount his back. They had not flown together in years, but it felt like no time had passed at all. As they rose into the sky, the twin suns dipped below the horizon. Stars blinked awake one by one. Somewhere out there a planet waited, a city of stone and steel, an arena built on blood and pride, and a princess who remembered her. Lyra held tight to Kyle's neck as they broke through the atmosphere. Below, Varelli shrank to a speck of light. Ahead, the unknown stretched like a black ocean. She did not know if Celine's offer was real or a clever lie. She did not know if she could win a duel against the Dominion's champion. She did not even know if she wanted to win a hand in marriage. But she knew one thing. This was not just about her anymore. The elven refugees, the last of her people, were counting on her. And if there was even a chance to save them, she had to take it. Cale banked left, aiming for the nearest transit lane. His speed built steadily, pushing them faster and faster until the stars themselves blurred into streaks of light. Lyra closed her eyes. She was no longer just a woman in exile. She was Lyra of Eilthar, last heir of the Star Elves, rider of the Obsidian Dragon, and the war was calling her home. As Zenthar's signal beacon flickered on their path, distant and cold, she whispered a promise into the void, not to Celine, not to the council, but to herself. I will not lose them again. And with that, they flew into the dark. The city of Zenthar rose from the planet's crust like a black crown forged in fire. Its towers twisted toward the sky, their surfaces embedded with shards of salvaged warships and ancient human tech. Lights pulsed along the walls in slow rhythms as if the city itself breathed. Above it all stood the grand arena, a hollowed asteroid pulled from deep space and reshaped into a bowl of polished obsidian. Its rim glowed faintly with captured starlight, and its gates were guarded by statues of forgotten conquerors. Lyra and Kyle arrived at dawn on the day of the twin eclipse. The sky darkened as the two suns aligned behind the planet's twin moons, casting long shadows over the streets. Crowds already gathered outside the arena, their voices a low hum of anticipation. They wore robes of every color, spoke a dozen tongues, and bore signs of 100 worlds. Yet all fell quiet as Lyra walked past. She wore no armor, only her patched tunic and a belt of woven vines that held her dagger. Her silver hair was loose now, catching the strange half-light of the eclipse. Cale walked beside her, head low, claws clicking softly against the stone. Some in the crowd crossed themselves. Others whispered her name like a prayer. A few stepped back, eyes wide with fear. She did not look at them. Her gaze was fixed on the arena gates. They opened without sound. Inside, the air was cold and dry, smelling of ozone and old blood. The stands stretched upward in spiraling tiers, packed with nobles and warlords, envoys and spies. All eyes turned to her the moment she entered. Silence fell like a curtain. At the center of the arena floor stood a massive warrior. He was twice the height of a man. His body crisscrossed with cybernetic grafts that hummed with power. One eye glowed red. The other was scarred shut. Armor plates covered his chest and arms, marked with the sigil of the High Dominion. His name was Vorlag, the undefeated champion of Zenthar. He had crushed every challenger for 5 cycles. None had lasted more than 3 breaths. He laughed when he saw Lyra. "You are the elf," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "This is not a place for ghosts." Lyra stopped 10 paces away. Cale sat beside her, tail-curled, eyes locked on Vorlag. "I am here for the trial," she said. "The trial is a duel. You have no weapon. I have my hands. And my truth," Vorlag smirked. "Truth dies fast in this pit." Above them, on the highest balcony, a figure appeared. Princess Celine stepped into view. She wore battle armor unlike any Lyra had seen. Sleek, silver, and lined with faint blue veins of energy. It was human-made, salvaged from the last Earth fleet before the silence fell. The HFY insignia, a rising phoenix over a cracked globe, was etched into the breastplate. Her hair was short and dark, her face sharp with command. But her eyes, those were the same. Deep brown, wide with memory. She looked down at Lyra. Recognition flickered there, buried under layers of duty and pain. The crowd waited. Celine raised one hand. Then her voice rang out, clear and strong across the silent arena. "Win this battle. Win my hand." The words hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. No one spoke. Even Vorlag seemed surprised. This was not the usual script. Usually, the duel was for honor or land or vengeance. Never for a princess's hand, and certainly not for an elf. Lyra stared up at Celine. Her heart beat faster. There was something in that look. Not just challenge, but plea. A message hidden beneath the words. Before Lyra could answer, the ground beneath her feet trembled. A deep groan echoed through the arena. Cracks appeared in the floor. Stone panels shifted, slid apart, and sank into the darkness below. The smooth fighting ring vanished. In its place rose walls of black metal, twisting and turning like living things. Corridors opened. Gravity flickered. Lights dimmed. The crowd gasped. This was no ordinary duel. The labyrinth had awakened. Celine's voice came again, softer now, carried by hidden speakers. The trial is not against Vorlag. It is against memory. Against fear. Against the lies we have been fed. Only one who remembers the truth can reach the center. Vorlag snarled and activated his arm cannons. But before he could fire, a panel beneath him dropped open. He fell with a roar, swallowed by the shifting maze. The entrance behind Lyra sealed shut with a hiss. She was alone. Kale growled low, smoke curling from his nostrils. "It is a trap," Lyra murmured, "but not the kind they think." She stepped forward. The first corridor sloped downward, lit by pale blue strips along the walls. The air grew colder. Whispers began, faint at first, then clearer. Voices from the past. "Do not leave us, Lyra. You swore you would protect Elthar. Coward." She clenched her jaw and kept walking. The walls showed reflections, not of her present self, but of who she used to be. A young princess in golden robes, a commander standing on a burning deck, a fugitive running through smoke-filled halls. Kale nudged her hand. His warmth grounded her. "I know," she said. "I remember." The path split. Left led to blinding light. Right plunged into darkness. She chose darkness. The moment she stepped in, gravity flipped. She fell upward, landing hard on what had been the ceiling. Kale twisted midair and landed beside her with a soft thud. The new floor stretched ahead, lined with mirrors. In each mirror, a different version of herself stared back. One held a sword, eyes full of rage. One knelt beside a grave, weeping. One stood with Celine as children, hands clasped under an earth sky. Lyra reached out to that last image. The mirror shattered. Glass rained down, but no pieces touched her. Instead, they formed words on the floor. "Who are you fighting for?" She looked at Kale. "For them. For us. For the truth." The walls dissolved. She stood now in a chamber shaped like a star. In the center floated a single orb of light. It pulsed slowly, like a heart. "Approach," said a voice that was both old and young. Lyra walked forward. The orb brightened. "Do you seek power?" it asked. "No." "Revenge?" "No." "Then what?" "To remember." The orb dimmed, then flared. Images flooded her mind. Earth burning. Elves and humans fighting side by side. A child, Celine, hiding in a bunker as bombs fell. Lyra, just a girl herself, pulling her from the rubble, swearing an oath under a dying sun. "We will rebuild together." The memory ended. Tears ran down Lyra's face. She had forgotten. Not on purpose, but the pain had buried it deep. The orb vanished. A door opened ahead. Beyond it, the maze continued. But now she walked with her head high. Each test that came, hallways that stretched forever, floors that turned to fire, voices that screamed her failures, she met with calm, because she remembered who she was. Not just a survivor, not just a refugee, but a promise keeper. Kale stayed close, his presence a steady flame in the shifting dark. Somewhere above, Celine watched through hidden lenses. Her hands gripped the balcony rail. Her armor hummed with dormant power. She had hoped Lyra would come, but she had not known if she would remember. Now, Seeing her move through the labyrinth with grace and sorrow and strength, Selene knew. The last heir of Aelthar had returned, and the real battle had only just begun. Deep in the maze, Lyra reached a final door. It was made of iron and etched with symbols from Earth's last war. The HFI crest stood at its center. She placed her palm on it. The door opened. Inside was not a battlefield, not a throne room, but a quiet garden under a false sky. And waiting in the center, unarmed and alone, was Selene. "You were never meant to fight him," Selene said softly. "You were meant to remember me." Lyra stepped forward, Kael at her side. "I remember," she said. "I just needed to find my way back." The twin eclipse reached its peak outside. For one moment, the entire arena fell into perfect silence, and in that silence, the past and future touched hands. The false sky above the hidden garden shimmered like old glass. Soft light filtered through it, casting gentle shadows over moss-covered stones and silver-leaf trees. The air smelled of rain and burnt metal, a strange mix of earth and war. Selene stood in the center of the garden, her armor powered down, its blue veins dark. Without the hard lines of battle gear, she looked younger, softer, almost fragile. But Lyra knew better. She had seen that look before long ago, in the ruins of a human colony on Series 7. Back then, Selene had been just a child with dirt on her face and fear in her eyes. Now that fear had turned into something sharper. Resolve. "You came?" Selene said. "I had no choice," Lyra replied, "but I would have come anyway." Kael circled the space once, sniffing the air, then settled near the entrance, watchful but calm. He sensed no immediate threat, only sorrow and truth. Selene walked to a stone bench and sat. She unfastened the last clasp on her gauntlet and let it fall to the ground with a soft clang. Her hands were calloused, marked with old burns and fresh scars. "They told me you were dead," Lyra said, standing a few steps away. "They told me you abandoned your people," Selene answered, "that you vanished when Aelthar fell. I did vanish, but not by choice. The council turned on us. They called the elves traitors for allying with humans. They burned our ships, hunted our children. I took Kael and ran so that at least one of us would live." Selene looked down. "I tried to speak for you. They laughed. Said elves were dreamers who forgot how to fight. But you were the one who taught me how to hold a blade. Who told me stories of stars that sang." Lyra sat beside her. The bench was cold. Memories pressed in from all sides. "Do you remember the song?" Selene asked. Lyra closed her eyes. Of course, the lullaby of the twin suns. They both hummed it then softly, voices overlapping like threads weaving back together. It was an old elven tune, but Selene had added human words to it as a girl, a mix of both worlds, a promise that neither would be forgotten. When the song ended, silence returned, but it was no longer heavy. "Why this trial?" Lyra asked. "Why pretend it was a duel?" "Because the council watches everything," Selene said. "They would never allow me to meet you openly. They think I am still their obedient princess. They do not know I have spent years rebuilding what they destroyed, gathering allies, protecting the last refugees." She reached into a hidden compartment in her belt and pulled out a small data crystal. It glowed faintly. "This is a list of every elven child hidden in Sector 9. They are safe for now. But if I do not produce a victor from this trial by tomorrow's dawn, the council will send purge squads. They believe fear keeps loyalty." Lyra's hands tightened. So the duel was never real. Not the way they think. The labyrinth was my design. I rebuilt it using old earth tech and elven memory weave. Only someone who carried the truth in their bones could pass through. "Only you." "Then why the offer?" Lyra asked. "Win my hand." Selene looked at her, eyes steady. "Because they expect me to marry for power, to bind the dominion to a warlord like Vorlag. If I choose you instead, as victor, as partner, they cannot refuse without breaking their own laws. And if they try, I have the Athena ready. The Athena, the last HFY warship, hidden beneath Xanthar for 20 cycles, powered by a core that responds only to human and elven resonance. I found it in the ruins of Mars' orbit, spent years restoring it in secret." Lyra stared. "That ship was lost in the Silence Wars. They said it took Earth's final message into the void. It did, and now it holds our last hope." Kael lifted his head. A low hum came from deep in his chest. Not a warning, recognition. He had heard stories of the Athena too. Elven tales spoke of a dragon-shaped sigil on its bridge, placed there by the last human commander who believed elves and humans were meant to fly together. Celine stood and walked to a stone arch at the far end of the garden. She pressed her palm to its surface. The ground trembled lightly. A section of the floor slid aside, revealing a dark stairwell. "The way down," she said, "to the heart of Zenthar. To the ship." Lyra followed her. The stairs spiraled deep, carved from bedrock and lined with emergency lights that flickered like fireflies. The air grew warmer, thick with the scent of oil and ozone. Far below, a low thrum could be heard, the pulse of a dormant engine waiting to wake. As they descended, Selene spoke. "The Council thinks they control the Dominion, but they are blind. They do not see how the people suffer, how the refugees starve in the lower sectors, how the war with the outer fleets drains our strength. They cling to old hatreds like armor. And you think we can change that," Lyra said. "Not we. You. You are the symbol they cannot ignore, the last heir of Elthar, the rider of the obsidian dragon. If you stand with me, others will follow. Elves, humans, even those who once fought us. What if I fail? You will not. Kale would not have come if you were not ready." They reached the bottom. A massive door stood before them, sealed with a lock shaped like a phoenix rising. Selene placed the data crystal into a slot beside it. The door hissed open. Inside lay the Athena's Wrath. The ship was smaller than Lyra expected, sleek and sharp, built for speed and stealth rather than brute force. Its hull gleamed with a coating that absorbed light, making it nearly invisible in shadow. Along its side, half hidden under grime, was the dragon sigil Kale had sensed. They walked onto the bridge. Consoles flickered to life as Selene approached. A soft voice spoke from the ceiling. Identity confirmed. "Commander Selene Hale. You have returned, Hale." So that was her full name. Simple. Human. Strong. Lyra liked it. "Can it fly?" she asked. "With both of us, yes. The Corps requires 2 signatures. One human-blooded, one elven-born. I can pilot. You must awaken the heart. The resonance chamber, where the ship's soul lives. It bonds with its crew, but it will not respond to just anyone. It remembers Earth's fall. It grieves." Lyra understood. She had felt that same grief in the labyrinth. Kale padded onto the bridge behind them. He sniffed the air, then walked to the center of the room and lay down as if claiming it. "He knows," Selene said. Lyra nodded. "He always knows." Suddenly alarms blared above. Red lights flashed. Selene rushed to a console. Her face went pale. "They know. Forlag survived the maze," he told them. "The Council is sending enforcers. They will be here in minutes. Can we launch?" "Not without the heart awakened. The engines are dead. Then I go now." Lyra turned and followed the ship's inner path toward the resonance chamber. It was a small room, circular with walls made of polished alloy that reflected like water. In the center floated a sphere of liquid light, blue, silver, and gold swirling together. It pulsed slowly like a sleeping heart. Lyra stepped forward. She removed her boots, then her belt, until only her tunic remained. She placed her hands on the sphere. At once, visions rushed in, earth burning, children singing under broken skies, soldiers holding hands before a final charge. A woman with a phoenix tattoo whispering into a recorder, "Tell them we did not give up." The last broadcast, the HFY anthem. Tears filled Lyra's eyes. She did not just see the memories, she felt them. The hope, the rage, the love that refused to die. She began to hum. The lullaby of the twin suns, blended with the words of the anthem. The sphere brightened. The ship shuddered. On the bridge, Selene watched as the engines powered to life. Lights flared across every panel. The Athena sang, a deep, resonant tone that echoed through the cavern. Kale stood and let out a roar that shook the walls. Above, boots pounded on stone. Shouts echoed down the stairwell. Too late. The Athena's ramp sealed shut. Thrusters ignited. The ground cracked as the ship rose, tearing through layers of rock and metal. Selene grabbed the pilot's seat and strapped in. Lyra appeared on the bridge, breathless but steady. "Hold on," Selene said. The Athena blasted through the surface of Zenthar, erupting into the twilight sky just as the twin eclipse ended. Suns broke free, painting the clouds in gold and violet. Below, the arena stood silent. Above, the last hope of 2 species soared into the stars, and in the heart of the ship, a dragon curled around the core, singing with it. The war was changing, and this time, they would not run. The Athena's wrath climbed through Xanthar's atmosphere like a blade drawn from stone. Clouds parted as the ship pierced the sky, its hull glowing faintly from the heat of ascent. Inside, the air hummed with energy. Every panel pulsed with soft blue light. The resonance core, now awake, sang a low, steady note that vibrated through the deck plates and into the bones of those aboard. Lyra stood at the rear viewport, watching the planet shrink below. Smoke rose from the city. Alarms flashed across the surface like nervous fireflies. They had escaped just in time. Enforcer ships were already launching, dark specks peeling away from orbital docks, their engines flaring red. Kale lay coiled near the core chamber hatch, eyes half closed but ears twitching at every shift in tone. He could feel the ship's heartbeat syncing with his own. It was old magic, the kind written in starlight and blood, not in code or steel. The Athena remembered what the galaxy had tried to forget, that elves and humans were never meant to be enemies. Celine worked the controls with calm precision. Her fingers danced over the interface, rerouting power, adjusting trajectory, scanning for safe lanes. Her armor was still on, though the chest plate bore a fresh dent from their rush through the tunnels. Sweat clung to her temples, but her voice stayed even. "They are coming," she said. 3 interceptors, Class 7 hunters, fast but not smart. "Can we outrun them?" Lyra asked. "Not yet. The core is still stabilizing. We need 5 more minutes before full jump capacity." Then we hold Lyra moved to the tactical station. It was designed for human hands, but the interface responded to her touch as if it had been waiting. Symbols she did not know appeared, then shifted into Elven script. The ship knew her. "What is this?" she murmured. "The defense grid. It is tied to the core. If you guide it, it will answer." Lyra placed both hands on the console. The moment she did, the ship's song changed, deeper, fiercer. The Athena was not just a vessel. It was a weapon, and it had been waiting for a reason to fight again. Outside, the first hunter opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked past the hull, searing the air. The Athena jolted but held course. Lyra focused. Lines of light spread across the screen, mapping the enemy ships. She saw their weak points: the coolant vents near the engine nacelles, the unshielded relay nodes along the spine. She whispered commands in the old tongue. The Athena responded. Panels along its flanks slid open. Thin rods extended, humming with charged energy. They were not guns. They were resonance emitters, devices that could shatter metal with the right frequency. Lyra closed her eyes and listened to the song. Then she sang back. A pulse of sound, too deep for ears but felt in the marrow, shot from the Athena. It struck the lead hunter not with force but with truth. The ship's own engine harmonics turned against it. Metal groaned. Panels blew outward. The hunter spun wildly and vanished into the clouds, crippled but not destroyed. Celine glanced back. "You did that. The ship did. I just reminded it how." The other 2 hunters broke formation, flanking the Athena. They were smarter. They would not fall for the same trick twice. Kale stood suddenly, his wings flaring wide. He walked to the forward hatch and pressed his snout against the inner seal. A low growl rumbled from his chest, not of fear but of focus. "He wants to help," Lyra said. Celine hesitated. "The launch bay is not rated for living cargo." "He is not cargo. He is part of this." Celine met Lyra's gaze, then nodded. "Open the forward airlock," the hatch hissed. Kale stepped onto the outer hull, claws digging into the reinforced plating. Magnetic fields held him in place as the wind howled around him. His scales darkened further, absorbing the sunlight, blending into shadow. The hunters adjusted, confused by the sudden silhouette on the hull. "That is no drone," one pilot said over open channel. "It is worse," Celine replied. Cutting the comms, Lyra watched through the forward cam. Kale crouched low, tail coiled tight. As the hunters closed in, he leapt, not with wings, but with raw power. He landed on the starboard hunter's nose, claws tearing through the sensor array. The ship veered hard, alarms blaring. Before the pilot could react, Kale opened his jaws and unleashed a focused burst of sonic breath, a weapon not of fire but of sound, tuned to the same frequency that had crippled the first ship. The hunter's hull cracked. Oxygen vented. It spiraled away, dark and dead. The last hunter fired wildly. Lyra guided the Athena into a sharp roll, evading the worst of it. Kale launched himself from the dying ship, using his wings just enough to glide back toward the Athena. Celine opened the bay. He landed with a thud and patted inside, smoke curling from his jaws. "You are reckless," Lyra said. but she pressed her forehead to his. He rumbled softly, "Worth it." The jump drive chimed. "Ready?" Celine plotted a course, not to the outer colonies, not to neutral space, but deeper, into the nebula of Veils, a graveyard of old wars and broken ships, a place even the Dominion feared to enter. "We need to talk to the fleet," she said. "What fleet?" "The last one. The ones who never surrendered." They waited, just like we did, Lyra understood. There were still humans and elves out there, scattered, hidden, but alive, and they would answer a signal from the Athena. But first they had to survive. As the ship leapt into the jump stream, the stars stretched into silver lines. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the ship's steady hum and Kale's breathing. Celine unbuckled and walked to Lyra. "I did not know if you would remember me," she said. "I never forgot. Not really. I just buried it under survival." "We both did." For a long moment they stood in silence, not as princess in exile, not as heir and refugee, but as two women who had lost everything and still chose to hope. Kale lay down between them, tail curling around both their feet. The nebula opened ahead, a swirl of violet gas and ember light. Within it shadows moved, not asteroids, ships, old ones, patched and proud, bearing the Phoenix and the twin suns. They had been waiting. The Athena broadcast its call, the HFY anthem, woven with the elven lullaby. One by one, the ships powered up. Lights flared. Comms channels opened. "Welcome home," came a voice, grizzled but warm. Celine took the pilot seat again. Lyra stood beside her. Kale rested his head on the console. "We are not just running anymore," Lyra said. "No," Celine replied. "Now we lead." And as the fleet gathered behind them, a new signal pulsed from the Athena, not of war, but of reunion. The bond of fire and starlight had been reforged, and the galaxy would not forget it again. The fleet gathered in the heart of the nebula of Veils, a place where starlight drowned in violet mist and time itself seemed to slow. 37 ships hung in silence, some human, some elven, most a mix of both, patched with hope and old courage. Their hulls bore scars from 100 battles, but their lights burned steady. They had waited long. Now they had a reason to fight. At their center floated the Athena's wrath, no longer hidden, no longer alone. Its dragon sigil glowed faintly along the side, polished by Kale's claws during the quiet hours. Inside, Lyra and Celine stood on the command deck, watching the comms light up with faces they had not seen in years. Old commanders, refugee captains, even a few young pilots who had only heard stories of the Alliance. "We are ready," said one voice, a woman with silver braids and eyes like flint. "I am Captain Nia of the Dawnward." "We stand with you and we with you," Celine replied. Lyra studied the tactical map. The Dominion fleet was coming. Not just enforcers this time, but the full might of the High Council. Battleships lined with void cannons, carriers filled with drone swarms, and at their lead, the Iron Throne, the Council's flagship, said to be built from the bones of a dead star. "They mean to erase us," Lyra said. "They always have," Celine answered. "But this time we are not hiding." The plan was simple, desperate, beautiful. The Athena would fly straight at the Iron Throne. While the Dominion focused on it, the rest of the fleet would strike the support lines, cutting supply routes, disabling relay stations, freeing occupied sectors. It was not a plan built on numbers. It was built on truth, because the Athena carried something the Dominion had forgotten. A song. Deep in the resonance chamber, Kyle lay coiled around the core. His scales pulsed with the same rhythm as the ship's heart. He had not slept since they left Zenthar. He did not need to. His body was becoming part of the vessel, his breath feeding its power, his mind linked to its memory. Lyra entered the chamber. "You feel it too," she said. Kale opened one eye. "Yes. The end is near, but not theirs." She knelt beside him and placed a hand on his snout. "Thank you for what? For never leaving me." He nudged her gently. "Never will." On the bridge, Selene interfaced with the ship's neural core. Thin threads of elven dream silk, woven with human biocircuitry, wrapped around her temples. They allowed her to speak directly to the Athena's AI. Not as pilot to machine, but as soul to soul. The AI had a name now. Aria. The last voice from Earth's final broadcast. "Tell me what to do," Celine whispered. Show them who we are, Arya replied. As the fleet moved into position, the Dominion arrived. Ships emerged from jump streams like knives from sheaths. The Iron Throne loomed largest, its hull black as a wound, cannons glowing with gathered power. It fired without warning. A beam of pure void energy split the nebula, aimed straight for the Athena. Lyra gripped the console. Now. Selene triggered the resonance field. The Athena did not dodge. It sang. From its emitters poured a wave of sound. Not noise, but meaning. It carried the HFY anthem, the elven lullaby, the voices of children from Earth and Aelthar, the last words of dying soldiers who chose hope over fear. It was not a weapon. It was a memory. And the Dominion fleet faltered. On every ship, screens flickered. Speakers crackled. Soldiers who had never known Earth saw images of green fields and blue skies. Elves who had been taught to hate humans remembered shared festivals under twin moons. The song reached into their hearts and woke something long buried. Even the Iron Throne shuddered. On its bridge, the High Council stood in stunned silence. Their armor could not block this. Their firewalls could not delete truth. One enforcer ship dropped its weapons, then another. Then a whole wing broke formation and powered down. The tide turned not with explosions, but with remembrance. But the Council would not yield. The Iron Throne charged its main cannon again, this time targeting the refugee sector below, the place where elven children waited in hiding. They would rather burn everything than lose control. No, Lyra said. She ran to the core chamber, Selene close behind. We have to stop it, Lyra said. How together? You in the mind, me in the heart. Kale in the fire. They formed a circle around the core. Selene linked to Arya through the dream silk. Lyra placed her palms on the liquid light. Kale opened his jaws and released a steady stream of sonic breath, not to destroy, but to harmonize. The Athena's song changed. It became a single note, pure and sharp, woven from 3 souls. It shot through space like a spear of light and sound. It struck the Iron Throne's cannon not with force, but with truth. The weapon overloaded, not from damage, but from shame. The cannon turned inward. The ship groaned. Panels blew. Lights died. The Iron Throne listed heavily, smoke trailing from its spine. The rest of the Dominion fleet watched in silence. Then, one by one, they lowered their flags. The war was over, not because they were defeated, but because they remembered who they were supposed to be. Dawn broke over Zenthar the next cycle, not from any sun, but from the lights of returning ships. The refugee sector opened its gates. Children ran into the arms of parents they had not seen in years. Elven elders wept as human medics tended their wounds. Old enemies shared water and bread. On the observation deck of the Athena, Lyra and Selene stood side by side. They did not speak of marriage, of crowns, of titles. Those things did not matter anymore. What matters, Lyra said, is that we are free, and we are together, Selene replied. Kale circled the ship once, wings spread wide against the new sky. Then he soared upward, not as a pet, not as a weapon, but as a guardian. His roar echoed across the clouds, a promise that no one would be left behind again. Far below, the people began to rebuild, not a dominion, not a kingdom, but a coalition born of fire and starlight, forged in silence and song, and led by 2 women who chose hope when the galaxy offered only war. The dawn they had won was not just a new day. It was a new beginning, and they would face it together.